Yes, welcome into another edition of Richie and Rob here on betPARX and the great folks at betPARX. And if you haven't already, you got to download the betPARX app. You bet betPARX. John, my man, how you doing,
Bert,
friend?
doing great.
Good. It's good to see you as always, bud. It's always fun to talk after a win, right? Maybe not a work of art, maybe not a Mona Lisa, John, but you know better than anybody else how hard it is to get these things. So on that, with that premise, let's start there for a minute. It hasn't maybe been what we anticipated in the first two games in terms of them just really handling teams, and there's some things you're looking at that you're maybe slightly concerned about, which we'll get to in a second. But give me your overall just sense of where this team is right now and how close or how far they are from what you thought they'd be.
They're not where I expected they'd be. It is a work in progress, but we are an incredibly talented group. It was circumstantial defensively. You're missing a lot of personnel in the middle of the field. You're missing some of your best cover guys on the back end. Yet you still held up and you still pulled out a win by changing your approach shortly after you discovered your approach was not going to work. Sticking with the run, 48 runs is amazing. 48 carries is something you can hang your hat on. You can be proud of as an offense. You know, when I came to Philadelphia as a free agent, every guy in that locker room wanted to talk about the game when the Oakland Raiders that I played for came to Philadelphia at the Vet and ran the ball 49 times. Those guys on that defense wanted to say, guys, you kicked our butts, man.
Yeah.
You walked us up and down that field. That was sheer physical dominance. Kudos to you, Richie. Glad we're hanging together. We're on the same team now. But really, they wanted to talk about that because it is unusual to be able to go out and do that, to impose your will on a defense with the run game, with a very basic, boiled down run game. I thought that was incredible. That's a great sign moving forward that, hey, when all else fails, lean into the run, and we're still going to have a great chance to win.
Well, that's the thing, John. I think a lot of people, because maybe in part they're disappointed in the passing game so far, they view it as a passing league, which it is. They sort of gloss over that. Like, yeah, well, the Eagles can do that if they want to, and that's fine. Like, no, man. You know how many teams in the league are able to do it to that degree with that amount of success? I mean, the run-pass ratio was 48-18. You ran for whatever it was, 257. I mean, that is rarefied air. And they knew what was coming, John, after the first 5-10 runs.
No secrets. And 259 yards on the ground is the second most in the Nick Sirianni head coach era. So, man, we've run the heck out of this ball. We've run this ball flat. And that was the second most we've been able to generate on the ground. That's an incredible performance by the offensive line and by DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, it was. And that's the 10th time under Sirianni they've run for 200-plus yards in his tenure. That's pretty impressive when you think about it.
Sure is.
But let's go to the passing game, John. Real reason for concern in your estimation? It's early. Like, where do you fall, and who do you point a finger at?
A little bit of everyone. The looks that we're getting defensively are different than what we've seen before. We knew that defensive coordinators were going to go back to the drawing board this past offseason to try to figure out a way to slow us down. And they're disguising things. They are making it confusing. The nebulous looks on the back end. There's some crazy stuff that defensive coordinators are throwing out there. And it was no different last week against the Vikings. You got sort of an amoeba look up front where you got 5 or 6 guys standing at the line of scrimmage, milling around. The offensive linemen's trying to make calls to figure out who's blocking who. And I think there's some indecision there. I think that's part of why the pass protection hasn't been as great as we would hope. And Jalen now distrusts the pass protection because it hasn't been as great as we would hope. So he's breaking the pocket earlier than he should. Everything's been off kilter with the passing game. Now, at the end of the third quarter, into the fourth quarter, it felt like we finally started to get some rhythm in the passing game. And I hope that bodes well moving forward. I know that every team we're going to play, they're going to give us similar looks where it's difficult to tell exactly what the front is, but they got fast guys on the field, and they're going to try to be athletic, and they're going to try to make it as difficult as possible. They're going to disguise things to make sure it's tough to tell if it's man or zone for Jalen Hurts, and he's going to have to get better at reading that out.
And Todd Bowles and that crew will do that this upcoming week. But before we get to that, John, I want to hit a couple other things. The defense is pretty banged up right now, and we saw Minnesota really take advantage of that. Look, Justin Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson and that crew are going to get theirs most times anyway, but especially when you're as banged up as they are. I mean, they're down 2 nickel corners now with Maddox and McPherson. They're banged up with Dean. There's inexperience back there. I mean, this feels like a way bigger problem to me than an offense that I think can figure this thing out. But where do you fall on the back part of the defense?
Well, Nakobe Dean's on IR, so he can't come back for another 5 weeks. But it was great news this week in talking to Nick Sirianni, where he said all those guys have a chance to come back and play. We know that we got a tough team. We got a group of character guys. We know they're dying to be out there on the field. I think a lot of the reason they weren't out there last week is because of the short turnaround for a Thursday game. We'll have guys back. And that will do a lot to help our cause defensively. I can't imagine how difficult it must be to communicate a defense when you got one old head out there. It was just Darius Slay. Right. Just Darius Slay.
Yeah.
Forget about leadership, the guys who've worn the green dot, guys who know how to line guys up. We didn't have that luxury against the Vikings. And you could tell that we were a work in progress once again, sort of the theme for the Vikings game.
All right, let's end on a high note here. Jalen Carter, he is 4th right now in the entirety of the NFL in pressures, John. He has hit the ground running. Yeah, he's one of those guys you see right away and you're like, okay, this is quite real. The interior D-line generally, just give me your impressions.
Jalen Carter with 11 pressures at the top of the league. Josh Sweat has 10. Josh Sweat has 10 pressures too. So we're getting it from the inside at D tackle. We're getting it from the edge with Josh Sweat. Jalen Carter is unbelievable. Dick Vermeil told us he doesn't know if he has a limit. Dick Vermeil, the guy who's seen more football than anyone I know in the world.
Oh my God.
He said he doesn't think Jalen Carter has a limit and compared him to Reggie White after his second game. Oof. I think that says everything I could ever surmise, I could ever bring together on this guy. He is big. He's tough. He's fast. Lane Johnson's talking about how he's getting beaten up and pushed around in practice by this rookie.
The baby rhino. Yeah.
Unbelievable. He's going to dominate. He's already dominating. He's so advanced in terms of moves and counter moves. And so not only is he incredibly gifted, athletic, gigantic, and perfect for the role that they've put him in, but he's really smart and really dexterous and really advanced in terms of his learning at the defensive tackle spot.
All right, John, it's fun as always, my friend, and you got to stay tuned. We're going to give you a little preview coming up as well for the Birds and the Bucks. He's Jon Ritchie. I am Rob Ellis. We are Ritchie and Rob, betPARX. Yes, betPARX. You bet.